adding and subtracting fractions. So now that you guys know how to simplify, you'll want to make sure you're simplifying all of your answers at the end of the problem. But now let's go over our adding and subtracting. Now you are only allowed to add and subtract fractions that have a common denominator. If they don't have the same bottom number, the same denominator, you can't add or subtract fractions. You must have a common denominator, and when you add or subtract, the denominator stays the same. So in this first problem, I already have matching 5s. I know 5 doesn't change. When you have your common denominator, it stays the same for the rest of the problem, but only when we're adding and subtracting. So now we can do 3 plus 6 is 9. Now I can ask myself, can I simplify this? Can I divide both 9 and 5 by the same number and get a perfect whole number for both? No, I cannot. 9 over 5 will be my final answer there. Now over here, we do not have that common denominator yet. So sometimes you have to multiply one or both of the fractions before you can continue. So I see the number 4, and then I see a smaller number 2. So I can ask myself, 2 times what can match that 4? Oh, well I know I can multiply 2 times 2 to make that a 4. But you have to make sure whenever you're doing common denominator work, you're multiplying the top and bottom by the same number in the efforts of trying to get that same denominator. So I'm going to see 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. And I haven't touched 1/4 yet. So after I multiplied both the top and bottom by 2, I now have a common denominator. So now that will stay the same. 2 plus 1 is 3. My answer would be 3/4 there. Let's make it a little more complicated over here. Now I notice, can I multiply 2 times something to get 5? No, not a whole number. So sometimes you're going to have to multiply both fractions by something in order to get them to the same denominator. Now the easiest way to guarantee this will work is to take the denominator of your second fraction, and that's your multiplier for the first one. Take your denominator from the first fraction, and that can be your multiplier for the second. You just sort of borrow it and make those denominators your multiplier, because then you should be guaranteed 5 times 2 and 5 times 2. So we know both of these are now going to be over 10. We can just steal the denominator to decide what we're going to multiply by. So then 5 times 3 is 15. 1 times 2 is 2. Now that my denominator is the same, when I add and subtract, it stays the same. Then 15 minus 2 will be 13. Can I divide both 13 and 10 by the same number to make it smaller? No, I cannot. That would be our final answer.